I wasn't snooping. I want to make that clear, because it matters to me. I was looking for a phone charger. His gym bag was closest to the door. I unzipped the front pocket without thinking. And that's when I felt it. A second phone. Thin, basic, prepaid. The kind you buy with cash. I almost put it back. I stood there holding it for maybe 10 seconds, talking myself out of what I was already feeling. Then I turned it on. There was one contact saved in that phone. Not a name. Just the letter R. And there was one message thread. The most recent message, sent from Robert's number to R, read, "Phase 3 starts after the 14th. Make sure the transfers are clean." I didn't understand what that meant. But within 3 weeks, I understood exactly what it meant. And I need you to know, the affair, the woman, the hotel, all of it, by the time I found out about that part, it was almost the least shocking thing on a very long list. Because what Robert had actually been doing, quietly, carefully, for 5 years, was so much worse. And I almost never found out. If I hadn't needed a phone charger that morning, I would have walked into the rest of my life completely blind. Stay with me, because this story goes somewhere I promise you're not expecting. Before I go any further, if you've ever trusted someone so completely that you handed them the keys to your entire life, tap the like button. You'd be amazed how many people are in that exact situation right now and don't even know it. It takes 2 seconds, and it helps this channel reach someone who might really need to hear what I'm about to say. Okay, back to that gym bag. My name is Brenda. I was 34 years old when this happened. Married for 7 years. Living in a house we'd bought together in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina. Robert was the kind of husband that other people complimented you on. Smart, collected, good at dinner parties, great with directions. He ran a boutique financial advisory firm, small team, private clients, a reputation built slowly over years. He was proud of that reputation. He talked about it the way some people talk about a child they've raised. I was a high school English teacher. I loved my job. I was never particularly interested in managing money. That was Robert's world, and he knew it. So when my father passed away during our 3rd year of marriage and left behind a trust, not a fortune, but somewhere around $260,000, I asked Robert to help me manage it. He was my husband. He was a financial advisor. It made perfect sense. I signed what he put in front of me, didn't read every line, trusted the man I'd married. Looking back now, that signature, that single act of trust, is where everything actually begins. I put the burner phone back in his gym bag, exactly where I'd found it. I didn't say a word. I went to work that day and smiled at 27 teenagers and taught a lesson on The Great Gatsby. And the whole time, a part of my brain was somewhere else entirely, pulling at that message. Phase 3 starts after the 14th. Make sure the transfers are clean. Transfers, plural. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my side of the bed, listening to Robert breathe, and I thought about the person I was sharing that bed with. And I realized I was trying to figure out a stranger. 2 days later, he left for what he said was a client trip to Raleigh. I checked our joint banking app out of pure instinct. He wasn't in Raleigh. There was a hotel charge, downtown Charlotte. 12 minutes from our house. I called the hotel. The woman at the front desk confirmed Robert Holloway was checked in and asked if I'd like to be connected to the room. I said no. I hung up and sat with that for a minute. But here's what I want you to understand. The affair barely registered, because all I could think about was that message on the burner phone. Phase 3. After the 14th. Clean transfers. What was being transferred, and where? The next 4 days, I became someone I didn't recognize. I started small. Our shared bank accounts. I printed every statement from the last 3 years. I spread them across the kitchen table on a night Robert was out, and I went through each one with a yellow highlighter. The withdrawals weren't dramatic. That was the genius of it, actually. Never more than 2,000 or 3,000 at a time. Always during a week when I was overwhelmed. Midterms, end of semester. The week my sister had her surgery. It was like he knew when I wasn't looking. Over 30 months, he had quietly removed $61,000 from our joint savings. But that wasn't what made my hands start shaking. It was when I went looking for the trust documents from my father's estate. I kept physical copies in a fireproof box in the closet. I opened it, flipped to the section that outlined the trust structure, and I found something that made me read it 3 times to make sure I was understanding correctly. There was an amendment, dated 18 months after my father died. It had my signature on it. It listed Robert as sole managing trustee, with full authority to make distributions without my co-signature. I have no memory of signing that document. None. I called my older sister Dana. She was the only person I trusted with this, not because I didn't have friends, but because Dana is the kind of person who responds to a crisis by making a list. I needed a list. I read her the amendment language over the phone. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Brenda, do you actually remember signing that?" I told her no. Another silence. Then, "You need to get in front of a forensic documents examiner before you do anything else. Do you hear me? Before you confront him, before you file, before you do anything, you need to know if that's your real signature." I hadn't even thought of that. I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 4 years, and I started making calls. The forensic documents examiner was a woman named Dr. Sylvia Okafor. She'd spent 20 years working fraud cases. She looked at the amendment for about 45 seconds before she put it down. She said, very carefully, "I'm not going to make a definitive conclusion today, but I want to look at this more carefully before you do anything with it. Can you bring me something with your verified signature from that same time period?" I brought her 3 things: a lease renewal, a car loan application, and a birthday card I'd sent to Robert's mother, all from the same month as the trust amendment. She called me back 48 hours later. The signature on the trust amendment, she told me, was inconsistent with my verified signatures in ways that were not subtle. The pen pressure was different. The letter formation on my name was different. The signature had characteristics that were, her word, deliberate, like someone who had practiced it. I sat in my car in a Walgreens parking lot after she told me that, and I stared at the steering wheel. He hadn't just stolen from me. He had forged my name to give himself permission to steal from me. $260,000 that my father left me, gone. And I had been the one, unknowingly, who let him take it. Now I understood what Phase 3 meant. I went back to the bank statements. I went further this time. I pulled every record I could access related to the trust, and I found a pattern that made my stomach drop. The trust account had been distributed, almost completely, over the course of 4 years. Small amounts, irregular intervals, always routed through an account number I didn't recognize. My father's money, my inheritance, dispersed into something I couldn't see. And then I found the date. Robert had made the final distribution from the trust 11 days ago. The 14th. Phase 3 starts after 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 the 14th. I understood then that Robert wasn't just cheating on me. He wasn't just hiding money. He was on a timeline. He had a plan that had an ending. And that ending was designed to leave me with nothing. No inheritance, no savings, no real understanding of where any of it had gone before he walked out the door. He was weeks away from that door. Maybe less. I had to move faster than he was expecting. The only advantage I had was that he still didn't know what I'd found. My attorney's name was Renee Marsh. She'd been doing matrimonial and financial fraud law for 18 years. When I walked into her office and laid out the documents, she didn't say a word for almost 5 minutes. She just read. Then she looked up and said, "How did you find all of this yourself?" I told her about the gym bag, about the charger I was looking for. She smiled, just slightly, and said, "Good thing you were out of chargers." She brought in a forensic accountant named Terrence. Quiet man, mid-50s, the kind of person who clearly finds joy in numbers the way other people find joy in music. He started tracing the account that my father's trust money had been routed into. What he found took another 10 days. But when he called me, he asked me to come in person. He didn't want to say it over the phone. Terrence had traced the money to an LLC registered in Wyoming. Clean state for that kind of thing, minimal disclosure requirements, easy to set up quietly. The LLC was named after what appeared to be a random string of letters. But the managing member of that LLC was not Robert Holloway. It was a name I had never heard, a name that didn't appear anywhere in our life. Terrence slid a piece of paper across the desk, with a Wyoming driver's license photo printed on it. It was Robert. Different name, different address, different hair in the photo, shorter, darker. My husband had a second identity. He had been building an exit for 5 years, not just financially. An actual exit, a different name, a different state, money sitting in an account attached to a person who didn't technically exist in any of the spaces where Robert Holloway did. The affair wasn't the plan. The affair was just what happened when someone gets comfortable. When they start feeling like the finish line is close enough that they stop being careful. Renee contacted the State Attorney General's Financial Crimes Unit, quietly, with documentation. The investigation that opened from that referral was separate from our divorce proceedings, and critically, it was sealed. Robert wouldn't know it existed until it was already complete. Meanwhile, Robert came home one Tuesday evening and told me, calmly, sitting at the kitchen island, that he'd been thinking a lot about us. He said he loved me but thought we'd grown in different directions. He said he wanted to be honest with me. I asked him what honesty looked like to him. He said he thought we should separate, amicably. He said there wasn't much to divide, things had been tight, but he wanted to be fair. I looked at him for a moment, then I said, okay, let's do this right. He looked relieved. That was a mistake on his part. Renee filed the divorce petition on a Monday. Simultaneously, and this was the part that required the most precise timing, the Financial Crimes Unit executed a freeze order on every account connected to the Wyoming LLC, including accounts attached to the second identity. Robert walked into the mediation meeting that Thursday, completely confident. He had his attorney. He had a financial disclosure document showing almost nothing, a modest income, a nearly empty savings account, no significant assets. The picture of a man who, unfortunately, just didn't have much to offer. He didn't know that Terrence was sitting in a conference room 3 floors above us with a complete asset map. He didn't know that investigators had already made contact with his office. He didn't know that the Wyoming accounts were frozen. He didn't know that Sylvia Okafor had submitted her formal report on the forged signature to both our counsel and the AG's office. He thought he was walking into the last step of a plan 5 years in the making. Robert's attorney finished presenting the financial disclosure, sat back, clasped his hands. Renee opened a folder. She slid the Wyoming LLC documents across the table, then the second identity driver's license, then the forensic signature analysis, then the trust distribution records, then a printout showing the account balance, $189,000 remaining, that was now frozen by court order. Robert went completely still. His attorney whispered something to him. Robert looked at the documents for a long time. Then he looked up. He looked at me. Not at Renee, not at his attorney, at me. And I held eye contact with him, the man I had shared a bed with for 7 years, and I didn't look away. His attorney said they needed a recess. Renee said, of course, though I should mention, your client may also want to contact a criminal defense attorney before we resume. There's a parallel matter already in progress that this session won't resolve. Robert stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor, and he walked out of that room. And I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. I have to stop here and ask you, because I genuinely think about this. At what point would you have confronted him? The night I found the burner phone? When I saw the hotel charge? When I found the forged signature? Because I think about every single moment I could have said something and didn't. And I don't know if waiting was courage or just survival instinct. I'd really love to know what you think. Drop it in the comments right now. Tell me the moment you would have snapped. Okay, let me tell you what happened after he walked out that door. The criminal case moved faster than I expected. The forgery charge alone was significant. Add to that misappropriation of trust assets, fraudulent identity documents for the purpose of financial concealment, and wire transfer irregularities flagged in the Wyoming account, Robert's attorney eventually came back to Renee with a settlement offer. Complete financial restitution from every recoverable account, the Wyoming LLC assets, his firm's assets, a property in Asheville I hadn't even known about, purchased through the LLC. In exchange for my cooperation with the criminal process, which I gave willingly, Robert entered a plea agreement. He was sentenced to 3 years, with additional civil liability attached to any funds he couldn't immediately return. The second identity, that woman, that R in the burner phone contact, turned out to be his attorney for the Wyoming entity. Not a romantic affair partner, a co-conspirator who also faced charges. Diana, the woman from his actual affair, had no involvement in any of it. She came forward voluntarily when investigators made contact. She had believed he was separated. She was another person he had deceived completely. I don't have any anger toward her. We've never spoken, but I hope she's okay. Recovery doesn't look the way I thought it would. I thought I'd feel triumphant, like something from a movie. I thought I'd drive home from the final court hearing with the windows down and something loud playing on the radio. Instead, I sat in Renee's parking lot for 20 minutes. Quiet, not crying, just sitting with how heavy the whole thing had been, and how strange it felt to set it down. What I lost wasn't just money, though I lost a significant amount before I recovered it. What I lost was a version of my life I had genuinely believed in. 7 years of a story that turned out to have a different plot than the one I was reading. I moved into a small house on the east side of Charlotte 8 months after the divorce finalized. A real house, mine, purchased with a portion of the recovered assets, which included money from my father's estate. That part mattered to me more than the number. That money had been my father's. He'd worked his whole life for it and left it to me because he loved me. Getting it back felt like getting something of him back too. The first night in my house, I put some of his things on the bookshelf. A photo, a small wooden clock he'd kept on his desk. I stood in my own living room, in my own house, and I let myself feel the grief and the relief and the exhaustion all at once. And then I made coffee, and I sat by the window, and I thought about the gym bag, the phone charger I never found. I think about how different this story ends if I wasn't looking for it. If I'd found a charger somewhere else, if I'd grabbed my own bag that morning. The truth was always there. It was just waiting for someone to go looking for it. If something in your own life feels off right now, a number that doesn't add up, an explanation that almost makes sense but not quite, a feeling you keep quieting because it's easier, please don't keep quieting it. You don't have to go looking for something bad. But you deserve to know what's actually true. If you stayed until the end of this, thank you, really. This story still costs me something every time I tell it, but if it helps even one person trust their instincts or ask the questions they've been afraid to ask, then it's worth every word. Leave a comment. Tell me what part of this got to you. I read them, all of them. And if you want to hear more real stories about people who found the truth and fought their way back, subscribe and stay close. I have more to share. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.